Let's get right to it, you guys, though, the game of the week in the NFC. A division rivalry, of course, between the Cowboys and the Eagles, and we're going to go right to the Star in Texas. That is where we find Ed Werder, of course. And Ed, it was weird to not get an injury update from you on Wednesday, but today's medical update caught us all by surprise. What exactly is going on in Dallas today?
Well, Mike McCarthy wasn't on the injury report officially, but he did miss practice because he was diagnosed with appendicitis and he's undergone surgery today. You know, because he's devising the game plans and now calling the plays for the highest scoring offense in the league for the first time in Dallas, Mike McCarthy's importance to Dak Prescott and the players has never been higher. Defensive coordinator Dan Quinn was emphatic about his belief that McCarthy will recover from the appendectomy scheduled for today in time to fulfill his normal role Sunday night against the Eagles. In fact, he predicted McCarthy would be online tonight looking at practice video from today while beginning that recovery. McCarthy was here at the team facility this morning when he told Quinn he was experiencing severe abdominal pain. Quinn told McCarthy he didn't look well. He then went to be examined by the doctors, and the diagnosis of appendicitis was made. Quinn said players were informed during their walkthrough about the situation. The Cowboys depended upon their three veteran coordinators, Quinn, Brian Schottenheimer, and special teams coach Jim Fossil, to supervise their first practice of the week for the Eagles today. It seems worth noting that Quinn has extensive head coaching experience from his time with the Falcons and was also the interim head coach when McCarthy missed a December game in New Orleans 2 years ago. They defeated the Saints by 10 in the Superdome when McCarthy tested positive for COVID, an experience the players feel may benefit them now.
Shout out to COVID. It helped us learn how to adjust quickly. But definitely praying for him to get back, healthy as soon as possible. And, he knows we're getting ready and we'll be ready.
Well, the difference from 2 years ago when McCarthy missed his only game is that Kellen Moore at the time was the play caller, not McCarthy. If McCarthy, Laura, misses the game, which is not the expectation, presumably the play calling would belong to offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, who was appointed to that position this offseason. He's been an offensive play caller for numerous teams for many years in his long coaching career, but this is the first time he's been an offensive coordinator and didn't have play calling responsibility. But again, the Cowboys think McCarthy will be there to fulfill his normal head coaching role on Sunday night.
Yeah, thanks, Ed, for all the information. I hope he feels better, too. My mom actually went through the appendectomy. It is not pleasant. So I don't.
Information that was totally necessary.
Well, it was, because that's a lot to go through.
Your mom.
She's great now. Okay, Dan, with McCarthy not at the facility, though, leading up to the game, how much does that affect the game plan heading into Sunday?
I do not believe it affects anything during the week. They can still do everything necessary. I do believe it's a big deal, potentially, if he's not there on Sunday. If you asked one of the main reasons why the Cowboys have had this success offensively, and certainly Dak Prescott, it's Mike McCarthy on game day. We have all raved about how good he has been play calling wise and tying things together and getting in a groove and seeing what the counter is. I've talked about this countless times ever since their bye week. So if he's not there, this is not just, I say this all the time, hey, just call a play. That's not what great play callers in the NFL do. He calls great games. That's what Mike McCarthy does. So if he's not there, that is a massive loss for that offense.
Yeah, it really increases the scope and responsibilities of everybody. Coaches, players, everyone takes a little bit more on because, coaches, especially veterans, understand that, coaches like Coach Quinn, Schottenheimer are not going to have their hands on the position groups or sides of the ball they typically do because they have to fill some of those head coaching duties throughout the week, play calling in practice. So you really have to rely on your veterans and captains and your leader in Dak Prescott. If in the event McCarthy is not there to call plays, Dak has to kind of assume this quasi-quarterback and play caller type position.
And how he plays a little bit, too.
Exactly. He has to be able to fill that void and say, okay, these are the things that have worked for us. These are the things I feel comfortable with so that the rest of the players on the team also feel confident in what he's doing.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, also, it's not just everyone always thinks like, well, the head coach decides if they go for it on fourth down. Well, if that's the case, they also determine how they play third down, how they play second down, where and when they're going to do that. That's kind of my point of how Dak's going to handle his play in some of those situations is going to be a big deal as well.
McCarthy says he'll be ready, says he'll be on the sideline. It's also worth thinking about just how important this game is when it comes to seeding. And here's a reminder that Dak Prescott enters the game playing arguably the best football of his career as he leads the NFL in QBR and passing touchdowns. He'll look to exploit an Eagles defense that has been one of the worst in the NFL at defending the pass. Philly has allowed the highest QBR and the second most passing touchdowns in the league. In the previous meeting between these two teams just over a month ago, remember, Prescott threw for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. As we bring in ESPN Eagles reporter Tim McManus, big news this week in Philly with the signing of linebacker Shaq Leonard. What did the team have to say about it today, Tim?
Yeah, Laura, so there was a fun, semi-dramatic moment inside the Eagles locker room a short time ago. As the media was walking in, there was a team employee standing on a chair, sliding in Shaq Leonard's new nameplate. And it spoke to kind of the freshness of it all. And, you know, the fact that one of the most respected linebackers in the game is now an Eagle. Now, Leonard was choosing between the Cowboys and the Eagles, who, of course, square off on Sunday Night Football. But it was Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, that helped tip the scales in favor of the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think it was just, Dallas, Philly. It was more so, Nick and I were together when we was in Indy. Nick was a great coach, great competitor. We had a bond, when we was in Indy. So we kind of just went with that.
You always got to worry about him punching the ball out. That was always a talk whenever we played the Colts, and he was the leader. So just having him over here, and I'm sure, just watching from afar, you could tell like the leadership value that he had over there in the Colts, and just having it in the locker room, in his locker room, is going to help us out a lot.
And Leonard said that he was stunned that he was released by the Colts in late November. He had 2 back surgeries last year, saw his playing time dip in 2023 with Indianapolis, and he said that he wants to prove not just to the Colts, but to himself that he can still play.
What do you want to see this Eagles defense do on Sunday?
I just think you got to tell Darius Slay and James Bradbury this is an earn your paycheck game. And by doing that, you tell those guys you're going to be singled up a ton. We got to protect the middle of the field because that's where we've been vulnerable. Number 2, you better have a plan for Jake Ferguson. Right now, Philadelphia defensively is allowing a QBR of 95 to tight ends. That would be the worst since 2016 by any defense. So you better have a plan for him because he's surging. And then if you go back to that last game they played about a month ago, and that fourth quarter performance by Dak Prescott, the lack of interior push or plan by their defensive tackle showed up. Watch both these guys here. That's a gashing hole for Dak Prescott to step up in. Lack of discipline. Another situation, both of these guys, and I understand they're playing against good players, but these guys for Philadelphia defensive tackle, the Jalen Carters and the Fletcher Cox, there's a lack of discipline there. Another example of just letting that run game get pushed. So the lack of plan, the execution, the rush security when it comes to, look at the lanes that they allowed Dak Prescott to step up in. So, and Marcus talks about that. I think that interior rush has got to play with great effort, but even more so, like unbelievable discipline, because that's when Dak got hot in that last meeting.
Yeah, you mentioned him getting hot. Hawk, when you think about Dak and company, they have been an issue for defenses in recent weeks. What changed for them?
It's what Dan talked about with Ferguson coming on, as well as specifically Brandon Cooks at the wide receiver position. Like, he's really been an X factor. Yes, CeeDee Lamb has been incredible down the field, but because Brandon Cooks has come on so strong, it's allowed them to really have a balanced passing attack and force defenses to approach them honestly. Now, I went back and watched the Arizona game that the Cardinals lost early in the season. That was kind of a surprise to everyone. And you could so visibly see that Cooks and Dak were not on the same page. From, quick game in the sticks, from him expecting him to sit down versus man-to-man approaches. But now when you watch the film at this part of the season, Cooks is on top of it. Cooks is on top of it. Him and Dak are seeing the same thing. So have they changed
the routes that they're using him in?
They haven't. What has happened is, in the West Coast offense, it is such a precise offense, and it requires so much detail that it just takes time to get on the same page. Your quarterback and your receiver have to be seeing the same things at the same time. And when you watch the film now, Cook and Dak, specifically in the middle of the field, are doing that at a very high clip.
Yeah, they're in a nice rhythm. All right, so Marcus Spears joins us just in time to talk about the Cowboys offense. What do you want to see out of them, Swagoo, against the Eagles on Sunday?
Add another element, Boogie. I want to see the run game get going. Just some explosive runs. I'm not talking about handing it off 30 times in this game. Obviously, the Cowboys are what they are because of what Dak is doing and pushing the ball downfield to these weapons. But I think this is another layer that they have to get going, right? Remember the thought that we had about Tony Pollard. People talked about him being the 3-down back now. He's going to be the feature guy. But along with him and Rico Dowdle, it is a changeup. Dowdle is the more powerful guy in between the tackles. And obviously Tony Pollard with the explosiveness when he finds a lane or a crease. But I think if you Dallas and you're thinking about not only this Philly game, but as you push forward, these games become much and much easier if you add this element to your game. Offensively, explosive down the field. We've talked about it. We've celebrated. We've applauded it. But this is one of those areas that I think they need to get going, or it could get you in these big games down the stretch.
Yeah, the Cowboys 3.5-point favorites at home. They've scored at least 40 points in 4 straight games at home. That's tied for the longest streak in NFL history.